Slash and Cast.
In today's episode, we'll be breaking down the 1996 classic slasher film, Scream. More specifically, we'll be talking about the murders that inspired the film itself. The Gainesville mutilations were violent and sadistic killings that baffled police and cultivated fear in the local university. Today, we'll be discussing how these murders inspired a screenplay that developed into the horror franchise that we know and love today. Welcome to another episode of the Cabinet of Dr. Mystery. I am your host, Dr. Mystery.
I tried to create living zombies.
Reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
God, give me strength.
All I gotta do is relax and they'll take me to their death.
Last chance to evacuate Earth before it is recycled.
This is a wicked, wicked world.
We are all evil in some form or another.
Thank you all so much for joining me for another episode. Hopefully everything is going rad in your lives because it's fucking Halloween. So I think I'm going to do a dab hit just so that when I do this episode, I'll be stuttering, mumbling, have some cotton mouth. You know, why not? Let's just get a little high. I got the day off. Royalty, Her Majesty's Royal Melons, amazing concentrate, and I'm about to get fucked up. I'm using a Focus V Carta right now, and we are doing some really, really, really tasty dabs. That is some good shit. Shout out to Royalty for making some delicious concentrates. Gainesville, Florida is the largest city in north central Florida. Gainesville is also known for the University of Florida. The University of Florida is the fourth largest public university campus by enrollment in the United States. Now, generally in these tales, these sadistic stories that sadly are usually true, you know, most of the time when I start off telling these stories, it starts in a smaller rural area as opposed to a large city like Gainesville. But like I always say, violence can happen anywhere at any time. In August of 1990, the University of Florida was terrorized by a spree killer that struck over several nights, murdering individuals in their apartments. The Gainesville Ripper seemed to be operating in only a small geographical area within the city, and most detectives assumed that this individual called this small area home, while some assumed that this individual just created a territory here. The general consensus was that the killer lived somewhere nearby. Within days, the Gainesville police alerted press that they had already had a suspect in custody. The individual was a student, just 18 years old, named Edward Lee Humphrey. So it's been a while since I've watched the original Scream movie, but already we see a lot of similarities between the Gainesville Ripper and the fictional town and the fictional killer in the movie Scream. But before we dive in a little bit here about Edward Lee Humphrey, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We all know that this guy isn't an innocent, sweet 18-year-old boy, because this piece of shit was arrested about a week after the last murder. Guess what he was arrested for? For beating the shit out of his grandmother. So Edward Lee Humphrey is an asshole, regardless of whether he's a murderer or not, he's an ass. We also learn that Edward is kind of a creep. At one point, he had lived in an apartment complex where Pauls and Tabota had lived. We'll get into them in a second. They were the murder victims, one of several. One neighbor that lived within the complex had told police that he would fall all over himself to be near Paula's, or to help her out. He'd go and sit by the pool and watch when she'd come out and dry off. So we'll dive into these specific people that I'm talking about a little further on in this episode. But the point of this statement is that one of these murder victims, this guy that was arrested, Edward Lee Humphrey, he was creeping on her. He was a little bit pervy, according to this neighbor, that he would just watch her. Super creepy. So right now we've got a creepy, perverted 18-year-old that definitely cannot control his emotions because we already know he can't because he beat the shit out of his grandmother. So the police had found that Humphrey, he enjoyed hanging out in dark wooded areas because of course he does. So the police began searching in the wooded areas near the murder scenes for various previous victims or any further evidence or weapons or anything that could connect him to or eliminate him, as the police spokesperson says, connect or eliminate Humphrey as a suspect. Humphrey did end up in a state institution, in a mental institution. He was too unstable for any sort of trial, but a few months after they arrested him, investigators, you gotta get the investigators. Maybe this episode I'll do it as like uncut. I'll leave in the weird mannerisms that I throw out there. What if, now I'm going to get sidetracked here, I apologize. What if there was a TV show where it was two alligators that were investigators? So they would have like detective hats and the long trench coats on, and they would solve crimes. PG-13, I'm thinking. You could have a couple jokes in there for the adults, and then you could even have their secretary as a crocodile. cabinetofmystery@gmail.com. Do you want to help me produce the Cabinet of Dr. Mystery presents The Investigators? I'm out here. I got ideas. Holla. So, while Humphrey, sorry to get sidetracked there, but I mean, when I have these great ideas, I have to share them. Maybe I shouldn't share them. Don't copyright that shit. I'm gonna copyright that shit after this fucking episode. Don't steal my alligator detective idea, you fuckers. Now, Humphrey was in a state mental institution, but, they believed that 36-year-old Danny Rolling, who was in custody in a nearby county, he was more likely the Gainesville Ripper. So the investigators, they believed that they had found the wrong guy. Now, when we look at Danny Rolling's childhood, we see that his father, James, was abusive towards both he and his mother, and that his mother had tried to leave her husband on several occasions because of the violence and the abuse that she suffered. As a teenager, Rolling was arrested several times for robbery and voyeurism. Fast forward to August 1990, when he was approximately 36 years old. I would put Rolling in more of a spree killer category than a serial killer category, mainly because the murders, they occurred over just a few nights, as opposed to over a longer period of time, a longer stretch of time. So if we break it down really quickly, on Friday, August 25th in the year 1990, this is when we're talking about, in the 90s, baby. Okay, let's get serious for a sec. On Friday, August 25th, Sonia Larson and Christine Powell were killed in their apartment. On Saturday the 26th, Krista Hoyt was also killed in her apartment. We'll get into that one later. That one is very gnarly. Yikes. On Monday the 27th, another pair of roommates, Tracy Pauls and Manny Taboda, were also killed in their apartment. Most of these individuals were mutilated, but Krista Hoyt received the most aggressive and sadistic mutilation, and we'll get into that in a second here. On Friday, August 24th, Rolling broke into the apartment shared by 17-year-old university student Sonia Larson and Christina Powell early in the morning. Now, he snuck by Powell, asleep on the couch downstairs, and he went upstairs to find Larson asleep in her bedroom. After murdering Larson, stabbing her to death with a K-bar knife, or a K-bar knife? I'm not sure. I'm really sorry. I didn't really do any research on the weapon. I think it was either K-bar or a K-bar. He then went back downstairs after murdering Larson. He woke Powell by taping her mouth shut and binding her limbs together behind her back. Then he threatened her with a knife and he cut her clothes off, sexually assaulted her, and forced her face down onto the floor where he stabbed her 5 times in the back. Afterwards, he posed her body and then went upstairs to pose the other body, both in sexually provocative positions, and then he took a shower before leaving the apartment. Because, you gotta stay clean. I think it was more for forensic, purposes. I think he was trying to deter detectives. And it's also, I read a couple articles where it talks about how he used vinegar to clean some of the bodies after. Now, on Saturday, August 25th, he broke into the apartment of 18-year-old Krista Hoyt. Now, we're going to get into some gnarly stuff. I mean, we've talked about pretty gnarly, gruesome, gory stuff. This one just, for some reason, this one kind of hit me hard. On Saturday, August 25th, he broke into the apartment of 18-year-old Krista Hoyt by opening a sliding glass door with a screwdriver. Now, this is something that he does pretty frequently. He goes up to the glass and he jams his screwdriver in there and he pops it open. He does that pretty frequently. After breaking in, he found that the apartment was empty, so he waited in the living room for someone to return. Shortly before noon, Hoyt entered the apartment. He surprised her from behind, placing her in a chokehold. Using the same duct tape that he had used from the previous murders, he gagged her mouth and he bound her wrists together behind her back, and he led her into the bedroom where he cut the clothes from her body and he sexually assaulted her. Using the same methods as before, he forced her to lie face down on the bed, and again he stabbed this woman in the back several times. In this incident, he took things a little further, however. He rolled her over, and he sliced her abdomen open from her pubic bone to her breastbone. Now, he left the scene of the crime, and he went back to his campsite, which we'll get into in a little bit later. But when he got home, he pulled a Tyler, and he found that he had forgotten his wallet. Bum, bum, bum. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a serial murderer and I usually forget my wallet at a crime scene. I'm saying I'm the type of person where it's 4 a.m. and I have everybody search the entire house for my cell phone or for my wallet because I think that I have left it at the bar. After returning to the scene of the crime, Rowling thought, why don't I add a little bit of shock value to this? Because, obviously this is not enough shock value. He proceeded to decapitate Hoyt, and he posed her body in a sitting position at the edge of the bed, and this is when he sliced off her nipples, and he took her head after he had decapitated it, and he placed it on the shelf facing her headless corpse. Let that one sink in. That's kind of fucked up. Not kind of, it is really fucked up. All right, I've been saving this for a special occasion. Seth Rogen, why would you do this to me? You introduce such a phenomenal product. You bring Houseplant into the country for a couple years and then you take it away. So I was at a Halloween party. My partner and I, we had hosted a Halloween party. It was really fun. Maybe I'll post some pictures on the socials. Her and I, we carved a pumpkin and we made it a bong. So we took rips out of our pumpkin bong. We dressed up as TJ Detweiler and Spinelli, and that was a lot of fun. We had a really good time. It was a great party. What was the fucking point of this? What was I fucking talking about? Oh, okay. I'm talking about the fucking houseplant. All right. So we're at this party, and I put a bunch of drinks in the fridge, and I had kind of like separated drinks that I was going to save for myself and drinks that were for everybody else, and I kind of like hid them in behind. But I didn't do a really good job of hiding them because I also I didn't want to be like, these drinks are for me, right? I was just kind of like hiding them in a way that was like, these drinks are here, but I'm hoping you'd take these ones instead. Anyway, so I had kind of stashed away 2 of these houseplant drinks, and basically you can't really find them in the city anymore. They're sold out, but there's a location in Regina. So when I was down in Regina for work, I had bought like as many as I could actually carry because of the carrying limits. I bought as many as I could carry and I brought them back over the course of 2 trips. And, they are my favorite. There's a company here that has bought out this company, is from what I understand, and they've made a similar recipe here in Canada. But these are the OGs. These are the classics. I cannot get enough of them. At this party, somebody took one and drank it, and obviously, good for you. Enjoy it because these are amazing. And that was the thing too, is like I did want to share, but I'm also kind of selfish, and I was just like, ooh, like I'll put these out for sharing, but in the hopes that nobody takes them because I want them for myself. But you like still share, you still offer it, but you're like, secretly don't take it, right? But you're like, actually, kind of do take it. So anyway, you're conflicted. That's what I'm getting at here. Conflicted. Anyway, the point of this fucking 8-hour story is that somebody took the houseplant grapefruit and I watched them drink it and they enjoyed it and I felt really good about myself, but I was also sad because I had already drank the other one. So I thought this was the last one that I was ever going to drink. And I was like, fuck. I'm glad that this person got to enjoy it, but I was also kind of sad. So it was like, I was happy that I was letting someone have that fantastic experience, but I was sad. So I am proud to say that I have found one more grapefruit houseplant in my fridge, and I saved it for today. Happy fucking Halloween. Why do I feel like I'm cheersing New Year's? Like Halloween marks the end of the year. Oh God. Holy shit. Oh, you have no idea how much I'm enjoying this right now. Fuck. I love these fucking drinks. Like, they taste fucking amazing, and I'm getting a little bit stoned. It's great. Now, getting back into this Scream inspiration tale, many students had begun taking extra precautions, like changing their daily routines, staying in after dark, and sleeping together in the same home in like larger groups of people. Some students had even withdrew their enrollment entirely or transferred to a completely different school. So a lot of students were really scared. God, I should do more dabs. On Monday, August 27th, Rowling broke into the apartment where 23-year-old Tracy Pauls and her roommate Manny Taboda were staying. See, I told you we would get there. I told you we would get there, and you didn't believe me. Okay. Rowling found Taboda asleep in one of the bedrooms, and he killed him after Taboda fought for his life. He woke up because he saw this guy breaking into his apartment, and he fought for his life. Now, hearing the noise, Pauls went down the hall to Taboda's room, where she saw Rowling murder him. She ran back to her bedroom, attempting to barricade herself, but Rowling broke through the door. Now, to me, I believe there is a scene where Ghostface like kicks in the door, but this also like reminds me of like Michael Myers. It reminds me of like Jason. Like, that's all I'm thinking about, which probably isn't great because this is real life and not a horror slasher classic. As we'll see right here, it still is pretty gruesome. He then proceeded with his same ritual as before, binding and gagging his victim with duct tape, cutting off their clothing, sexually assaulting them, and forcing them to lie face down before stabbing her in the back. So I'm saying them because this is the exact same thing that he's always done, but in this instance, he did this specifically to Paul's. In this case, he posed Paul's body, but not Taboda's. So he came in and killed Taboda and left him exactly where he died. All of his victims except for Taboda were petite brunettes, and as we see, all of them were young. Now, When investigators did eventually connect him to these murders, to these crimes, and to other crimes, as we'll see, they later concluded that this description of a petite brunette was a very similar look to that of his mother. After investigating Rolling, police connected these crimes to the November 1989 murders of a 55-year-old man, his 24-year-old daughter, and her 8-year-old son. The daughter, Julie Grissom's body, had been mutilated, cleaned, and later posed. Police found a cache of evidence at Rolling's campsite that connected him to these murders and several robberies. They later found further evidence that connected Rolling to the August 5th, 1990 sexual assault of Janet Frank in Sarasota, Florida. For whatever reason, we do not know, he decided not to murder her and he left her alive. In November 1991, Rolling was charged with 5 counts of murder, and after 4 years of waiting, he was finally brought to trial. Here he claimed that his motive for killing was to become a superstar serial murderer, and I do believe that he mentioned like Ted Bundy, like he wanted to become the likes of Ted Bundy. Before his trial could even begin, he unexpectedly pleaded guilty to all of the charges. On April 20th, 1994, he was sentenced to death. Shortly before he was executed in Florida, he confessed to the murders of Julie Grissom and her family. Now, I'm not sure if investigators had linked this murder of Julie Grissom and her family before or after he had confessed, but he did confess before he was executed. On October 25th, 2006, Rolling was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison, and I think the best justice of all was that he was murdered before Halloween, because fuck that guy. You don't get a fucking Halloween. Now, you're probably wondering, how did the Gainesville murders inspire the screenwriter of Scream? Most of the time, the way that these stories come about is that people are reading about these horrific murders in the paper, they're seeing it on the news, or they're hearing it on the radio, and it inspires them to create a work of fiction based on what they read, hear, or see. And this case is no different. The screenwriter Kevin Williamson was house-sitting in LA near the University of California, Los Angeles. One night while he was house-sitting home alone, Williamson turned on the television and watched a special about the Gainesville murders, and the decapitation and the body mutilation terrified him so much that he began to have nightmares about a knife-wielding killer that was waiting for him outside of the home that he was staying in. Sounds about right. Williamson sold his screenplay for Scream to the Weinstein brothers for $400,000. Boom, there you go. That is a cash cow, right? On December 20th, 1996, the Scream movie debuted, and it made over $80 million in its box office debut. Currently, the original Scream movie has grossed approximately $175 million. Now, if you include the proceeds from the sequels, the series itself has brought in around $600 million. I'm thinking that in the future, we can probably do another episode where we talk about murders that were claimed to have been inspired by the movie Scream. Thank you so much for joining me for this special Halloween episode. I hope you all have an incredibly spooky, wonderful Halloween, and I cannot wait to bring you more amazing content in the future. This episode is produced by Death Hotel Creative, hosted by myself, Dr. Mystery. The Cabinet of Dr. Mystery is a proud member of the Slash and Cast podcast network. To view more and to grab your exclusive Cabinet of Mystery merch, visit us at notwhatwesay.com. Check out our Instagram handle at Cabinet of Mystery or our Twitter at Open the Cabinet. Please leave us a review if you enjoyed the show and let us know what topics you'd like to hear in the future. You can hit us up either on the socials or at cabinetofmystery@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voice message and appear in upcoming episodes, leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm/Cabinet of Mystery. For sources on this episode, please see the episode description. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe or follow for more episodes.